Excellencies, distinguished guests, dear friends, please allow me to welcome you on behalf of the Czech Ministry of Foreign Affairs to the historic Černín Palais on the occasion of the 5th anniversary of the International Religious Freedom or Belief Alliance, the Article 18 alliance of 40 free countries around the globe. Our first president and philosopher Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk once said, "Democracy is a discussion. Without democracy, there is no dialogue. Without dialogue, there is no democracy. Without courage to speak and the humility to listen, freedom itself begins to fade." From our own Czech history, we know that the authoritarian regimes understand this very well. However, the Czech dealt with it in their own way through humor. In those days, we had a joke that the communist leaders in the Soviet Union, they had phones that you could hear from, but also you could speak into it. The communist leaders in the satellite countries of the Soviet Union, they had another phones. There was a small difference. You could hear from those phones, but you could not speak into it. Why? Because the leaders in the satellite countries were not allowed to say anything. The dialogue was not allowed. Authoritarian regimes replace dialogue with propaganda and persuasion with fear. Their intention is to control thought, suppress conscience, and punish difference. Look at the tools used by Russians justifying the killing of innocent people in Ukraine. Look at the methods used by Chinese in persecution of Uyghurs, Tibetans, and Christians. As if the growing of influence of authoritarian regimes were not enough, people in the entire Western civilization today are losing ability to talk to each other. It is sad to see that it is in a way sinking into totalitarian structures. It is electing populist, authoritarian leaders who do not talk to anyone and decide everything themselves. Perhaps the decline of democracy in the world is also related to the deepening inability to talk to each other, which is also to blame for the algorithms of, as I call them, anti-social media. People no longer speak with one another, they speak at one another. True dialogue is becoming rare. Too often, it is only two opposing monologues. Where words fail, violence begins. Freedom of religion or belief, it's not only a basic right, it is a way of communication. A real dialogue where everyone speaks, but also everyone listens, respects the other's difference, and it is in the same time ready to change his opinion. Real dialogue is not just communication. In a sense of Martin Buber, it is a way of being. We live in an age of uncertainty. Therefore, we need to build resilience, and FORB and religion itself can be an important and often overseen source of resilience. There is one old Hebrew saying, Shalach lachmecha al pnei hamayim, kiri berov hayamim timtsaenu. Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. by gathering here today, by speaking and listening. We are casting our bread upon the waters. We are doing something for people who are persecuted for their belief, but also something that may one day return to ourselves. Thank you for your presence today, creating a light of hope for those suffering for their belief in many parts of the world. Thank you very much. Please let's welcome here our two speakers, two very distinguished speakers that I appreciate very high. Rabbi David Rosen, Interfaith Advisor from Israel, and Professor Petr Kratochvíl from the Institute of International Relations Prague, and also member of the Board of the European Churches. Rabbi David Rosen, the floor is yours.
Dobre rano, shalom, salam, pax, mir. I'm very grateful to Ambassador Rožák, who I think has upgraded me to a position of which I'm not sure that I am really worthy of. I am reminded very much of the famous story of a man who survived the great flood at the end of the 19th century in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And this gentleman was interviewed by the press, and people started inviting him to give lectures, started charging an honorarium, and he managed to earn quite a decent living talking about how I was the sole survivor of the great flood in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. After a number of years, he goes to his eternal reward, and he is met by the Angel Gabriel, who says to him, "Welcome to heaven. As a new resident, perhaps you would like to give a talk this evening to the residents who are already here. If you tell me what your topic is, I will post it on the notice board so everybody will know." So the man says, "Very well, Gabriel. I will give an address this evening on how I survived the great flood in Johnstown, Pennsylvania at the end of the 19th century. And the angel Gabriel says to him, "Are you sure that's what you want to speak about?" And he says, "Listen, Gabriel, I made a very good living down there speaking about this. That's my subject. I want to speak about it." So the angel Gabriel says, "Well, you're very welcome to do so, but you should know that Noah is in the audience." And I must say, I feel very much like that. I'm very honored to be able to address this wonderful gathering on a topic of which you all know much more than I do. I hope I will be able to add a little something in my words. In fact, I also feel very much like the famous comment of the German comedian anti-Nazi Karl Valentin, who said, "Everything has been said, but not everyone has said it." That obviously wasn't so funny as the story of Noah. So as we have all heard already yesterday, and as you all know too well, the ability for people to express their most cherished convictions and attachments continues to be threatened by bigotry, usually the result of ignorance, and by the abuse of power. But in addition, the increasing fragmentation of modern society has also resulted in increasing intolerance for cultural and religious diversity in particular. In many countries, population movements have disrupted traditional norms and are often perceived as a threat. At the same time, failure to genuinely integrate communities of different heritages leads to alienation, which undermines social cohesion. Moreover, the digital landscape, particularly social media, which was correctly referred to yesterday as very often anti-social media, has become a double-edged sword capable of both connecting people and magnifying these divisions. It is within this complex environment that interfaith collaboration, bringing different communities and traditions together for the cause of religious freedom itself, and also through mutual education and understanding is able to play a pivotal role in advancing social cohesion. Personal and communal encounters and cooperation foster a sense of shared humanity that transcend doctrinal differences. Much responsibility lies upon the shoulders of general authorities to engage the different communities, especially around issues that affect them directly, in particular, the freedom of expression, but also regarding broader ethical issues on which the different traditions have insights to offer from the wisdom of their respective heritages, such as on health, security, and the environment. This both engages different communities in common concerns and highlights their contribution to the wider society. Such engagement creates a ripple effect, building trust not just between individuals and congregations, but also within the broader community, strengthening the very fabric of civil society. The challenges of social cohesion have, of course, been dramatically amplified by social media. The internet, with its algorithms and echo chambers, can isolate people into narrow, like-minded groups, reinforcing biases and limiting exposure to diverse perspectives and even to information. And thus people are very often nurtured upon narrow and even false data. The consequential spread of misinformation and hate speech can often spiral into persecution and conflict. Interfaith collaboration can provide a critically important counter-narrative to such division and hostility. Of course, such collaboration needs to be seen literally on the streets and not confined to the ivory tower of its professional protagonists and specialists. But even in the digital sphere, collaboration is already happening, with religious leaders, organizations, and youth groups using platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and X to share messages of peace, mutual respect, and tolerance. Certainly, much more needs to be done in this regard, and the civic and national authorities can do much to assist and facilitate this process. Live stream dialogues, creating engaging multimedia content that explains the different beliefs and practices, as well as online campaigns that highlight the importance of religious freedom, are ways in which positive digital activism can reach a vast audience, challenging negative stereotypes and demonstrating that people of different faiths can and do coexist harmoniously. Of additional critical importance are the development of shared literacy initiatives and education on how to identify and counter misinformation and hate speech. Again, such activities are in their infancy and need to be energetically supported. But by encouraging and enabling them to work together, faith communities can become a crucial tool and a united front against online polarization, transforming social media from a platform for division into a space for dialogue and reconciliation. Perhaps above all, interreligious collaboration can and indeed must highlight the universal ethical values that are so needed in an advanced technological society in order to ensure its morally productive health and progress. And I'll add on a little something about that shortly. But in this regard, we might note the famous biblical story regarding the first noted collective technological project as recorded in the book of Genesis in chapter 11, the story of the Tower of Babel, or Babel. The text tells us that the people were of one language, and they decide to build a massive skyscraper which offends God. Their language is then confused, communication is not possible, the people scatter, and thus the enterprise collapses. It's not precisely clear from the text what exactly was wrong with this project, other than perhaps the implied inference of human arrogance and presumptuousness. Many commentaries have been offered to explain the sin of the Tower of Babel. But there is one ancient rabbinic homily, a midrash, that gives us a very profound insight. It tells us if, when in the course of building this tower, a brick fell and shattered, everybody broke down in tears. But if a human being fell and was killed, nobody batted an eyelid. In other words, the Tower of Babel embodies a deification of materialism and technology at the expense of human compassion and dignity. And where a society's overwhelming concern is its material success and technological advancement, regardless, and not the moral welfare of society, there is no sense of the common good. Accordingly, unbridled selfishness becomes the norm, leading to corruption, and thus any genuine communication based on mutual respect becomes impossible. I did not consult with Ambassador Řehák beforehand, but I am echoing exactly what he said. In our world today, we see large sections of modern society where people may be able to converse technically, but all too often they are unable to communicate in any real, authentic sense of common purpose. The result is a society where citizens are not merely disagreeing on policy, but often see difference itself as a threat, instead of a source of enrichment, and even question the moral legitimacy of their fellow citizens and their deepest attachments. Through the public demonstration of interfaith collaboration and affirmation of values of human freedom, dignity, justice, righteousness, the pursuit of peace, etc., religious communities can contribute enormously to the well-being of the wider community, enabling it to benefit from the wisdom and guidance found within the various religious traditions, and thereby promoting a constructive public discourse to advance human flourishing both locally and globally. I might just refer to one specific example, and that was the remarkable gathering of 11 world religions in Hiroshima a year and a quarter ago to sign on to the Rome Call initiated by the Pontifical Academy for Life to provide ethical guidelines for AI, for artificial intelligence. And signing on, in addition, was Microsoft, IBM, Cisco, Qualcomm, and other high-tech initiatives, out of a recognition that the wisdom of the world religions is essential for the well-being and productive use of artificial intelligence. This was something that the Abu Dhabi Forum for Peace played a very significant role in, as well as it continues to do so. Let me conclude in reiterating the importance of collaboration between the faith communities, especially around the values of freedom, in particular for the health of modern society as a whole. In fostering empathy, building trust, and promoting collaboration, they directly address the core challenges of social fragmentation. Furthermore, in the digital age, interfaith relations can extend the positive impact by actively engaging with and transforming social media constructively, combating bigotry and prejudice, and thereby advancing a genuine common language of human flourishing. And it is precisely through interreligious collaboration in the pursuit of religious freedom that the latter itself is empowered and strengthened, providing a compelling vision of a more connected, compassionate, and unified future for society as a whole in all its blessed diversity. Thank you.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, sisters and brothers. It is a pleasure to join you this morning as we continue our conversation on the second day of the conference, Freedom of Religion and Belief as a Source of Resilience. And it is, of course, a distinct honor to speak after Rabbi David Rosen, by whose excellent speech I'm a bit humbled. But there are a few thoughts of mine that I'd like to add as a scholar who deals with religion and politics, and also as somebody heavily, intensely involved in the ecumenical movement and interfaith dialogue. It is not a platitude today to say that freedom of religion is not just a cherry on the cake. It is an essential part of the broader freedom of expression, and that freedom, in turn, is part of what I like to call the freedom to differ, and that, I think, is essential. Often, our deepest convictions about the meaning of life and about the good life of our communities are tied to our religious traditions. But without the ability to express these convictions openly, even when they differ significantly from the mainstream, we do not lose only a narrow legal aspect of our existence, but we lose something essential to our humanity. At the same time, the free exercise of religion and belief can itself become a wellspring of resilience for individuals and for entire communities. Faith is not about closing ourselves off, but about becoming vulnerable, about becoming sensitive to the burdens others carry, about the ability to live with otherness. Such faith can sustain people during hardship, help them find meaning among loss, and rebuild their lives after what they relied on has been shattered, after we are asked to partake in this difference and draw from it the inspiration for our own lives. In this way, freedom of belief and resilience are in fact deeply intertwined. Each sustains the other. But there is one important condition, and this, I argue, is absolutely essential. Faith should not be equated with the eternal return of the same, nor resilience with immobility. This may sound strange to your ears, or sometimes to my ears as well, since the very word resilience comes from the Latin word resilire, meaning to leap back, to recoil, and originally described materials such as timber that could absorb shocks and strain without breaking. Sometimes, based on this etymological roots, resilience is, I believe, wrongly understood as a leap back to an original form, the recreation of an idealized time before the crisis. If we focus too much on the words back and originally, I think we miss something deeper, something fundamentally important. True resilience is not about returning to the past. It is about adaptation and growth into something different. We ourselves continuously become different, about integrating even traumatic and painful experience into new strength and new understanding. In this sense, faith can also be seen as a form of resilience, not as the preservation of what once was, as if its purpose were to remain unchanged, but as a living force that evolves. Like every living entity, faith grows, interacts, and embraces new impulses. Its vitality lies not in sameness, but in its capacity to transform, to remain radical, that is, true to its roots, while at the same time responding to the realities of the present. I was reminded of this during a recent ecumenical meeting in Colombia, where I met representatives of the local churches and the Lutheran World Service in particular, working in Colombia and in Venezuela. And they told me how challenging their work has recently become. Development aid budgets of a number of important countries cut dramatically, violence continuing, vulnerable groups still marginalized and attacked. To reach some of the communities they serve, their teams must travel for almost a week, first by car, then by boat. And yet they continue to provide help even where other organizations have given up. Their resilience in the face of these difficulties is a direct consequence of their lived and practiced belief. Without a community that helps them adapt to stressful situations, and without their local contacts, often linked through church networks, their work would not be possible at all. And here comes the remarkable thing. I'm talking about the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Colombia, and that church has 1,800 members. So it's in a country of more than 50 million people. So it's a small minority by any measure, and yet its contribution to the well-being of society is profound. And this is something I have seen again and again in the ecumenical movement and my experience with interfaith dialogue as well. Small and minority faith communities, due to their willingness to adapt, often carry far more than their share of the common good. They act with quiet determination, helping others to endure and to rebuild. They do so precisely because they can express their faith freely, but also because they know what it means to live with difference, and so they strengthen the society around them. Yet communities like this one are, and I believe this is a serious problem, are facing a growing challenge. As my esteemed colleague, Professor Robert Joustra, some of you certainly know him, has recently aptly described, the challenge of our times is the rise of ethno-religious, or what he calls ethno-religious anti-pluralism, a state ideology that uses religion as a tool of exclusion and nationalism to suppress diversity and to deny difference. And yet, it is precisely difference and diversity, the coexistence of different faiths and convictions, that makes societies resilient. The protection of religious diversity is therefore not only a matter of rights, it is a foundation of strength. When people can express their beliefs freely and engage one another with respect, no matter how different others may seem, communities become more open, more creative, and ultimately more humane. Diversity and difference are not some artificial external impositions, but a consequence of the uniqueness of each human being. No two grains of sand are the same, after all. As we begin the second day of this conference, I wish all of us thoughtful discussions and meaningful encounters, moments that deepen our understanding and strengthen our shared commitment to the defense of diversity and to freedom of religion and belief as true sources of resilience. Thank you.